Emily Carter thought the worst thing about her red-eye flight would be the turbulence, until she fell asleep on a stranger's shoulder and woke up to discover he was watching her with the kindest eyes she'd ever seen. What she didn't know was that Marcus Reed, the gentleman who calmed her fears at 30,000 feet, was hiding a secret that would either destroy her trust forever or prove that love doesn't care about bank accounts. When a forgotten phone number on a crumpled receipt becomes the thread that could unravel everything, Emily must choose between the safety of her small-town life and a love that seems too good to be true. But Marcus has his own fears, because every woman who's ever discovered his wealth has seen dollar signs instead of his heart. Two souls, one chance encounter, and a revelation that will test whether real love can survive when the person you've fallen for isn't who you thought they were. If you're watching this story unfold, hit subscribe and tell me what city you're watching from. I love connecting with viewers from around the world. The coffee maker at Murphy's Diner had been broken for 3 days. Emily Carter wiped down the same counter for the 5th time, watching the clock above the kitchen window tick toward 11 p.m. Her feet ached in her worn sneakers. Her back felt tight from carrying heavy plates all day. "Table 6 wants extra ketchup," Sophia called from behind the counter. Her friend's voice sounded as tired as Emily felt. Emily grabbed 3 packets from the dispenser. The red plastic felt sticky in her hands. Everything in this place felt sticky after 16 hours of work. She walked over to the corner booth where an older man sat alone with his burger and fries. "Here you go, sir," she said, setting the packets down with a smile. Her face muscles felt stiff from smiling all day, but she meant it. Everyone deserved kindness, especially at this hour. "Thank you, sweetheart." The man looked up at her with grateful eyes. "You've been working hard tonight." Emily felt warmth spread through her chest. These small moments made the long shifts worth it. "Just doing my job. Can I get you anything else?" He shook his head and went back to his meal. Emily returned to the counter where Sophia was counting tips from her apron pocket. $47, Sophia said, holding up a small stack of bills. "Not bad for a Tuesday." Emily pulled her own tips from her pocket. The crumpled ones and fives added up to $32. With her hourly wage, it would cover groceries for the week and maybe gas for her old Honda. "Don't forget you have that early flight tomorrow," Sophia said, folding her money into her wallet. "What time do you need to leave?" Emily's stomach dropped. She had tried not to think about it all day. 5 a.m., the flight's at 7. Her sister's wedding in Portland was important, but Emily hated flying. She hated crowds and airports and being away from home. Most of all, she hated spending money she didn't have on a plane ticket. "You'll be fine," Sophia said, reading the worry on Emily's face. "It's just a few hours. Sleep on the plane." Emily nodded, but her chest felt tight. She had barely slept the night before, thinking about turbulence and cramped seats and strangers sitting too close. The bell above the door chimed. A young couple walked in, holding hands and laughing. They looked happy and carefree. Emily remembered feeling that way once, back when she was with Derek. That relationship had ended 8 months ago. Derek had said she worked too much. He said she never had time for fun or adventures. He wanted someone who could go out every weekend and take trips to the mountains. Emily had wanted those things too, but she also wanted to pay her rent and buy groceries. She wanted to help her mom with bills when things got tight. Derek never understood that some people didn't have choices. "You okay?" Sophia touched Emily's arm gently. "Yeah, just thinking." Emily shook her head and walked over to the new customers. "Hi there. Sit anywhere you'd like." The couple chose a booth by the window. They ordered coffee and apple pie to share. Emily watched them feed each other bites of dessert and felt a familiar ache in her chest. She missed having someone to share things with. She missed feeling like she mattered to another person, but she had learned not to trust those feelings too quickly. People left. They found someone more exciting or less complicated. They got tired of waiting for her to have time or money for their plans. "Last call for food," Mr. Murphy announced from the kitchen. The owner was a kind man in his 60s who let Emily work extra shifts when she needed money. He never complained when she had to take time off for family emergencies. Emily started cleaning the coffee station and wiping down menus. The couple by the window left a $5 tip on their $8 check. The generous gesture made her smile for real this time. By 11:30, the diner was empty except for staff. Emily helped Sophia stack chairs on tables and sweep the floor. Her arms felt heavy, and her eyes burned from tiredness. "Go home and sleep," Sophia said, hanging up her apron. "You need to be up in 4 hours." Emily looked at her friend with gratitude. Sophia was 3 years younger, but sometimes seemed wiser. She came from a big family that owned a restaurant downtown. She understood hard work and long hours, but she also knew how to have fun. "Thanks for covering my Saturday shift," Emily said. "I owe you." "You don't owe me anything. That's what friends do." Sophia pulled her car keys from her purse. "Now go pack your suitcase and try to get some rest." Emily drove home through empty streets. Her apartment building sat between a laundromat and a small grocery store. The neighborhood wasn't fancy, but it was safe and quiet. She had lived there for 2 years, ever since she moved out of her mom's house. Her one-bedroom apartment felt cool and peaceful after the hot, noisy diner. Emily kicked off her sneakers and wiggled her sore toes. She opened the refrigerator and pulled out a container of leftover pasta from Sunday dinner at her mom's house. While the food heated in the microwave, she threw clothes into her small suitcase: 2 dresses for the wedding events, comfortable shoes for walking, a sweater in case it got cold. She tried to pack light because checked bags cost extra money. The pasta was bland and slightly dry, but Emily ate it anyway. She was too tired to cook anything fresh. Her phone buzzed with a text from her sister Jenny. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. The rehearsal dinner is at 6. Love you." Emily smiled and typed back a heart emoji. Jenny had been planning this wedding for 2 years. She deserved a perfect day surrounded by family. Emily would push through her travel anxiety and be there with a smile. She set her alarm for 4 a.m. and crawled into bed without washing her face or brushing her teeth. Her body sank into the familiar mattress with relief, but her mind wouldn't slow down. What if the plane hit turbulence? What if she got sick during the flight? What if she couldn't afford the taxi from the Portland airport to her hotel? Emily took deep breaths and tried to think about happy things. Jenny in her wedding dress, dancing at the reception, seeing her cousins she hadn't talked to in months. Her eyes finally closed around 1 a.m. 3 hours of sleep would have to be enough. The alarm felt like a punch to the brain. Emily rolled over and slapped the snooze button, then forced herself to sit up. Her apartment was dark and quiet. The rest of the world was still sleeping. She stumbled to the bathroom and splashed cold water on her face. Her reflection looked pale and tired. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. She brushed her teeth and pulled her brown hair into a messy bun. Coffee would help, but she didn't have time to make it. The taxi would arrive in 20 minutes. Emily threw on jeans and a comfortable t-shirt, grabbed her suitcase, and locked her apartment door. The taxi driver was a middle-aged woman who seemed wide awake despite the early hour. She chatted about the weather and asked about Emily's trip. Emily tried to be polite, but worry was building in her stomach like a heavy stone. The airport was already busy with travelers. Long lines snaked through the terminal. Emily checked in at a kiosk, printed her boarding pass, and joined the security line. The people around her looked confident and relaxed. She wondered if they flew all the time for work or vacations. After security, Emily found her gate and collapsed into a plastic chair. Her flight would board in 30 minutes. She closed her eyes and leaned her head back, trying to rest. "Now boarding Group A for Flight 847 to Portland," announced a cheerful voice over the speaker. Emily checked her boarding pass. Group C, she had 15 more minutes to sit and worry. Passengers lined up with rolling suitcases and coffee cups. A businessman talked loudly on his phone about meetings and deadlines. A family with 2 small children struggled with car seats and diaper bags. An elderly couple held hands and smiled at each other. Group B may now board. Emily's palms started sweating. She wiped them on her jeans and tried to breathe normally. Flying was safe. Millions of people did it every day. She would be fine. Group C may now board. Emily stood on shaky legs and joined the line. Her boarding pass trembled in her hand. The gate agent scanned it with a bright smile. "Have a wonderful flight," the woman said. Emily walked down the narrow jet bridge toward the plane. Her heart pounded against her ribs. The airplane door looked small and intimidating. Flight attendants greeted passengers with practiced smiles. Emily found her seat in row 12, middle seat. She had paid extra to choose it instead of getting randomly assigned to a worse spot. The window seat was already taken by a man reading a paperback book. He looked up and nodded politely as she squeezed past him. The aisle seat was empty. Emily stored her small bag in the overhead compartment and settled in. The airplane felt cramped and stuffy. She could hear engines humming somewhere beneath her feet. More passengers filed down the narrow aisle. searching for seats and shoving bags into overhead bins. A baby started crying 3 rows ahead. Emily closed her eyes and tried to imagine herself on solid ground in Portland. Someone stopped beside her row. Emily opened her eyes to see a tall black man holding a leather briefcase. He wore dark jeans and a gray sweater that looked soft and expensive. His face was kind but serious. "Excuse me," he said in a deep, quiet voice. "I think that's my seat." Emily looked at the empty aisle seat, then at his boarding pass. 12C, she confirmed. "That's you." He smiled and the expression transformed his whole face. "Thank you. Sorry to bother you." As he lifted his briefcase into the overhead compartment, Emily noticed his arms were muscular under the sweater sleeves. He moved with calm confidence like someone who flew all the time. He sat down and buckled his seatbelt with practiced efficiency. Emily caught a hint of his cologne, something clean and woodsy that made her want to breathe deeper. "First time flying?" he asked, glancing at her hands gripped tightly in her lap. Emily felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Is it that obvious?" "Just a guess. You look a little nervous." His voice was gentle, without any judgment. Emily found herself relaxing slightly. "I don't fly much. Actually, I hate it." "Understandable, but this crew is good and it's a short flight. We'll be there before you know it." The confidence in his tone was reassuring. Emily studied his profile as he checked his phone. Strong jaw, neat beard, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He looked like someone who had his life figured out. "I'm Marcus," he said, putting his phone away. "Emily." "Nice to meet you, Emily. What takes you to Portland?" "My sister's wedding." She managed a small smile. "I'm the maid of honor, so I have to be there even though I'm terrified of flying." Marcus chuckled softly. "That's what family's for. Making us do things that scare us." The flight attendants began their safety demonstration. Emily tried to pay attention to the exits and oxygen masks, but her mind kept drifting. Marcus smelled good. His presence beside her felt solid and calming. The plane started moving backward from the gate. Emily's stomach lurched. She gripped the armrests and closed her eyes. "Hey," Marcus said quietly. "You okay?" Emily opened her eyes to find him watching her with concern. "Just getting started. This is the worst part for me." "Want to know a secret? I used to be afraid of flying too." "Really?" "Really. First time I got on a plane, I was 8 years old. Cried the whole way to my grandmother's house in Chicago." Emily smiled despite her fear. "What changed?" "Practice, and realizing the pilots want to get home to their families just as much as we do. They're not taking any chances up there." The plane turned onto the runway. Through the small window, Emily could see other planes lined up like toys. The engines grew louder, and she felt the aircraft gathering speed. "Here we go," Marcus said. His voice stayed calm and steady. Emily closed her eyes as the plane lifted off the ground. Her stomach dropped and her ears popped, but Marcus's presence beside her made it bearable. She didn't feel completely alone with her fear. "We're up," he said after a minute. "Smoothest takeoff I've had in months." Emily opened her eyes. The ground was falling away below them, getting smaller and less detailed. From up here, the city looked peaceful and organized, like a map come to life. "Not so bad," she admitted. "The worst part's over. Now we just sit back and enjoy the ride." The flight attendant came by offering drinks and snacks. Marcus ordered coffee. Emily asked for water, thinking caffeine might make her more anxious. "So what do you do back home?" Marcus asked as they settled in for the flight. "I'm a waitress, nothing exciting." Emily felt embarrassed by how plain her life sounded. "What about you?" "I work in business, also nothing too exciting." Something in his tone suggested there was more to the story, but Emily didn't push. She was grateful he was being modest instead of trying to impress her. They talked about safe topics, the weather, travel experiences, favorite foods. Marcus had a way of asking questions that made Emily feel interesting, like her thoughts and opinions mattered. The plane hit a small patch of turbulence, and Emily grabbed the armrest. Without thinking, Marcus placed his hand over hers. "Just some bumpy air," he said. "We're fine." His hand was warm and steady. Emily felt her panic ease under his touch. When the turbulence passed, he moved his hand away, but the comfort lingered. "Thank you," she said softly. "I don't know why flying makes me so crazy." "It's not crazy. Lots of people feel the same way." Emily studied his profile again. Marcus seemed like the kind of person who was good in emergencies, calm and reassuring without being condescending. She wondered what it would be like to have someone like that in her life all the time. The thought surprised her. She had sworn off dating after Derek. Men seemed to want things she couldn't give: time, money, carefree adventures. But sitting here with Marcus felt different, natural and easy. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Sure." "Do you travel a lot for work?" Marcus hesitated for a moment. "Some. Not as much as I used to." Again, Emily sensed he was holding something back, but she didn't mind. Everyone had private parts of their life. She certainly wasn't telling him about her struggles with money or her ex-boyfriend's complaints. The flight attendant announced they would begin their descent into Portland soon. Emily's heart rate picked up again, but this time it was mixed with disappointment. She didn't want this conversation to end. "Landing's even easier than takeoff," Marcus assured her. "Just a little bump when we touch down." Emily nodded, trying to look braver than she felt. Outside the window, she could see mountains in the distance and green forests stretching for miles. As the plane descended, her ears popped again. Marcus showed her how to yawn to relieve the pressure. Such a small thing, but it made her feel cared for in a way she hadn't experienced in months. The wheels touched the runway with barely a bump. Emily let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. "See?" Marcus said with a smile. "Piece of cake." The plane taxied to the gate and passengers started gathering their belongings. Emily felt sad that their time together was ending. She pulled her bag from the overhead compartment and turned to thank Marcus for his kindness. But he was already standing, checking his phone with a focused expression. The moment had passed. They were strangers again, rushing to their separate lives. "Thank you for making the flight easier," Emily said as they waited in the aisle to disembark. Marcus looked up from his phone with that gentle smile. "My pleasure, Emily. I hope your sister's wedding is beautiful." "Thanks. I hope your business trip goes well." They moved slowly toward the front of the plane with the crowd of passengers. At the door, the flight attendants thanked everyone for flying with them. Emily stepped onto the jet bridge and immediately felt more relaxed on solid ground. The terminal was busy with people meeting arrivals and catching connecting flights. Emily followed signs toward baggage claim, her thoughts still on the kind stranger from seat 12C. She would probably never see Marcus again. But for 2.5 hours, he had made her feel safe and interesting. That was worth something. At baggage claim, Emily waited for her small suitcase and tried to spot her hotel shuttle. Tomorrow would be busy with wedding preparations and family time. She needed to focus on being the best maid of honor she could be. But as she climbed onto the shuttle bus, Emily found herself smiling. Maybe flying wasn't so terrible after all, at least not when you had the right person sitting next to you. The shuttle pulled away from the airport, and Emily watched Portland's skyline grow larger through the window. She had made it safely to her sister's wedding. That was what mattered. Still, she couldn't shake the memory of Marcus's steady voice and gentle hands. Some strangers left marks on your heart, even in the briefest encounters. Emily settled back in her seat and closed her eyes, finally allowing herself to rest. Tomorrow would bring new adventures, but tonight she would remember the man who made her feel brave at 30,000 feet. Emily woke up in her hotel room, with sunlight streaming through thin curtains. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then she remembered. Portland, Jenny's wedding, the flight with Marcus. She rolled over and checked her phone. 9 a.m. The rehearsal wasn't until this afternoon, but she wanted to see Jenny and help with any last-minute preparations. After a quick shower, Emily put on a sundress and comfortable sandals. The hotel breakfast was simple but good. Scrambled eggs, toast, and coffee that was much better than the broken machine at Murphy's Diner. Jenny had texted the address of the bridal salon where she was getting her final dress fitting. Emily took a taxi through Portland's tree-lined streets, watching the city wake up around her. The bridal salon was busy with customers and assistants carrying armloads of white fabric. Emily found Jenny standing on a platform in front of 3 mirrors, wearing the most beautiful dress Emily had ever seen. "You made it," Jenny squealed, stepping carefully off the platform to hug her sister. The dress was ivory silk with delicate beading on the bodice. It fit Jenny perfectly, making her look like a princess. "You're gorgeous," Emily said, tears pricking her eyes. Mom's going to cry when she sees you. She already did. She was here an hour ago for pictures. Jenny spun slowly, watching the dress move in the mirrors. How was your flight? I know you were nervous. Emily thought about Marcus and his steady presence beside her. Actually, it wasn't too bad. I sat next to someone really nice. Ooh, tell me everything, Jenny said, eyes lighting up with curiosity. Nothing to tell. Just a friendly guy who helped me stay calm during takeoff and landing. Jenny studied her sister's face. You're blushing. I'm not, but Emily could feel heat in her cheeks. We just talked. I'll probably never see him again. You never know, Jenny said with a knowing smile. Sometimes the universe puts people in your path for a reason. The seamstress returned with pins and measuring tape. Emily sat in a comfortable chair and watched her sister get fussed over. Jenny looked so happy and confident. She had always been the brave one, the sister who took chances and followed her dreams. Jenny's fiancé Tom worked as a teacher. They had met in college and dated for 5 years before getting engaged. Their relationship was steady and solid, built on friendship and shared values. Emily envied that kind of security. After the fitting, the sisters walked to a nearby cafe for lunch. Jenny ordered a salad, saying she didn't want to feel bloated in her dress tomorrow. Emily got a sandwich and promised to eat Jenny's share if needed. So tell me about this mystery man on the plane, Jenny said, picking at her lettuce. Emily sipped her iced tea and tried to put her feelings into words. His name was Marcus. He was just calm, like nothing could rattle him. When I was freaking out about turbulence, he knew exactly what to say. What did he look like? Tall, black, really handsome. He wore glasses in this gray sweater that probably cost more than I make in a week. Jenny raised an eyebrow. Sounds like he has money? That's what I thought too, but he didn't act stuck up or anything. He was just nice. Emily took a bite of her sandwich. Not that it matters. Like I said, I'll never see him again. Did you give him your number? No, we said goodbye at the gate and that was it. Jenny looked disappointed. Emily, when was the last time you met someone who made you feel good about yourself? Emily couldn't remember. Derek had made her feel inadequate most of the time. Before him, there had been a few short relationships that ended when the guys realized she worked too much and had no extra money for expensive dates. I'm not looking for anyone right now, Emily said. I'm focused on work and helping Mom and just getting by. But what about being happy? What about having someone to share your life with? Emily felt the familiar ache in her chest. She wanted those things, but wanting and having were different. People like her didn't end up with men who wore expensive sweaters and flew confidently across the country. Let's talk about your wedding, Emily said, changing the subject. Are you nervous about tomorrow? Jenny's face lit up again. She launched into details about flowers and music and the photographer's schedule. Emily listened and smiled and tried to push thoughts of Marcus out of her mind. But that evening, as Emily got ready for the rehearsal dinner, she found herself checking her phone for messages that would never come. She didn't even have Marcus's number. She didn't know his last name or where he lived or what kind of business he worked in. The rehearsal went smoothly. Jenny and Tom looked perfect together, radiating joy and love. Emily walked down the aisle carrying a practice bouquet, thinking about how it would feel to have someone waiting for her at the altar. At dinner afterward, Emily sat between her cousin Mike and Jenny's college roommate Sarah. They talked about work and travel and their dating disasters. Sarah had recently broken up with someone who turned out to be married. Mike was convinced all the good women were taken. What about you, Emily? Sarah asked. Anyone special in your life? Not at the moment, Emily said, cutting her chicken. I'm taking a break from dating. That's probably smart, Mike said. Focus on yourself for a while. But Emily didn't want to focus on herself. She wanted to focus on someone else, someone who made her feel interesting and valuable, someone like the man who had held her hand during turbulence and made flying seem less scary. She excused herself and stepped outside for fresh air. The restaurant had a small patio overlooking the river. Portland's lights sparkled on the water, and Emily could hear live music from somewhere nearby. Her phone buzzed with a text message. For a crazy moment, she hoped it might be Marcus somehow tracking down her number, but it was just Sophia checking in from home. How's the wedding stuff? Did you survive the flight? Emily typed back quickly. Everything's great. Flight was fine. Thanks for covering my shifts. No problem. Enjoy the family time. Emily put her phone away and leaned against the patio railing. Tomorrow, Jenny would marry Tom and start a new chapter of her life. Emily would return home to her apartment and her job and her carefully managed routine. There was nothing wrong with that life. She was independent and responsible. She took care of herself and helped her family when needed. But sometimes she felt like she was just surviving instead of really living. Back inside, the dinner was winding down. Jenny and Tom thanked everyone for coming and reminded the wedding party about timing for tomorrow. Emily hugged her sister goodnight and took a taxi back to her hotel. Her room felt quiet and empty. Emily turned on the television for background noise and started laying out her clothes for tomorrow. The bridesmaid dress was a soft blue that complemented her eyes. Jenny had chosen well. As Emily brushed her teeth, she thought about Marcus again. She wondered where he was staying in Portland, whether his business meetings had gone well, if he ever thought about the nervous woman who had sat beside him on the plane. Probably not. He was probably used to meeting people in his travels, being kind to strangers, then moving on without looking back. Emily was just one of many people who had briefly crossed his path. She crawled into bed and tried to focus on tomorrow's events. Jenny's happiness was what mattered. Emily would be the perfect maid of honor, smiling and supportive and celebratory. But as she drifted off to sleep, Emily's last thought was of Marcus's gentle voice saying her name. Some encounters left deeper impressions than they should. This was one of those times. The wedding day dawned sunny and warm. Emily woke early and ordered room service breakfast, knowing she wouldn't have time to eat much later. She painted her nails, did her hair, and applied makeup with extra care. By noon, she was at the church helping Jenny get dressed. The bride looked radiant, all nerves forgotten in the excitement of the moment. Emily fastened the dozens of tiny buttons up the back of the dress and arranged Jenny's veil. "I can't believe this is really happening," Jenny whispered as she looked at herself in the mirror. "You're going to be the most beautiful bride ever," Emily said, meaning every word. The other bridesmaids arrived, 3 of Jenny's friends from college and work. They took pictures and sipped champagne and fussed over every detail of hair and makeup. Emily felt honored to be Jenny's maid of honor. She had helped plan the bachelorette party and bridal shower. She had listened to wedding stress and vendor complaints for months. Now she got to see Jenny's dreams come true. The ceremony was perfect. Jenny walked down the aisle on their father's arm, beaming at Tom waiting by the altar. Emily followed with the other bridesmaids, carrying a bouquet of white roses and baby's breath. As the minister spoke about love and commitment, Emily found her mind wandering again to Marcus. She wondered what he thought about marriage, whether he had ever been married, if he wanted a family someday. She shook her head slightly, annoyed with herself. She needed to stop thinking about a stranger she would never see again. This was Jenny's day, and Emily needed to be present for every moment. The reception was held at a historic hotel downtown. Emily gave a speech about growing up with Jenny, sharing funny stories and heartfelt wishes for the couple's future. Everyone laughed and cried in the right places. During dinner, Emily sat at the head table watching Jenny and Tom gaze at each other like they were the only 2 people in the room. It was beautiful and slightly painful at the same time. "They're perfect together," said David, Tom's brother and best man. He was a nice guy, a few years older than Emily, who worked as an accountant. "They really are," Emily agreed. "They've been together so long I can't imagine them with anyone else. What about you? Anyone special back home?" Emily had fielded this question a dozen times over the weekend. "Not right now. I'm focusing on my career." It was easier than explaining that her career was serving coffee and burgers to pay the bills. David seemed nice enough, but Emily didn't feel any spark of connection. He was perfectly pleasant and perfectly forgettable. After dinner came dancing. Jenny and Tom's first dance was to a slow, romantic song that made half the guests cry. Emily danced with her father, then with David, then with various relatives and family friends. She was taking a break by the bar when her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Hi, Emily. This is Marcus from yesterday's flight. I hope your sister's wedding is going well. I found something that might belong to you." Emily's heart stopped. She read the message 3 times to make sure she wasn't imagining it. How had he gotten her number? What had she lost? She stepped outside onto the hotel's balcony to call him back. The phone rang twice before his familiar voice answered. "Emily, thanks for calling back. "How did you get my number?" she asked, then immediately regretted how suspicious she sounded. Marcus chuckled. "I called the airline's lost and found department. You left a receipt with your phone number written on it in the seat pocket. I thought you might want it back." Emily remembered scribbling her number on a coffee receipt during a work break last week. She must have stuck it in the seat pocket with her boarding pass and forgotten about it. "That was sweet of you to go to all that trouble," she said, "but it's just an old receipt, nothing important." "I figured as much, but I thought it might be an excuse to call and see how the wedding went." Emily's pulse quickened. He had wanted an excuse to call her. "It was beautiful. My sister looked perfect and everything went smoothly." "I'm glad. You seemed really nervous about the whole trip." "I was, but it turned out fine." Emily paused, unsure what to say next. She could hear music and laughter from the reception behind her. "Are you still in Portland?" "Actually, yes. My meetings ran longer than expected. I fly out tomorrow morning." They talked for a few minutes about the wedding and his business trip. Marcus didn't give many details about his work, but he seemed genuinely interested in hearing about Jenny and Tom and the beautiful ceremony. "I should probably get back inside," Emily said reluctantly, "but thank you for calling and for being so nice on the plane yesterday." "It was my pleasure. Emily, if you're ever back in Portland, I'd love to buy you dinner to celebrate your successful flight." Emily's stomach fluttered with nervous excitement. "I'd like that, but I don't travel much. This was a rare occasion." "Well, if you ever find yourself with another reason to face your fear of flying, let me know." After they hung up, Emily stood on the balcony staring at her phone. Marcus had called her. He wanted to see her again. It felt too good to be true. But Portland was 1,000 miles from home. Emily couldn't afford to fly here for dinner dates with men she barely knew, no matter how kind and attractive they were. She went back inside and threw herself into celebrating Jenny's happiness. She danced until her feet hurt and laughed until her cheeks ached. When Jenny threw her bouquet, Emily caught it by accident and blushed as the other single women teased her about being next. Late that night, back in her hotel room, Emily looked at Marcus's number saved in her phone. She thought about texting him goodnight, but decided against it. She didn't want to seem desperate or clingy. Instead, she packed her suitcase and set her alarm for an early flight home. Tomorrow she would return to her real life, work and bills and the comfortable routine she had built for herself. But something had changed during this weekend. Emily had been reminded that she wanted more than just survival. She wanted connection and romance and someone to share her dreams with. Marcus had shown her a glimpse of what that might feel like. Even if nothing came of it, she was grateful for the reminder that there were good men in the world, men who were gentle with nervous strangers and went out of their way to return meaningless receipts. Emily fell asleep holding her phone, Marcus's number glowing softly on the screen. Outside her window, Portland slept peacefully under a canopy of stars. Tomorrow would bring new possibilities. Emily just had to be brave enough to reach for them. The flight home was uneventful. Emily's seat was by the window this time, and she spent most of the trip looking down at clouds and thinking about the weekend. Jenny's happiness, the beautiful ceremony, and Marcus's unexpected phone call all swirled together in her mind. When the plane landed, Emily felt proud of herself for handling both flights without panic. Maybe she was braver than she thought. Sophia picked her up at the airport, eager to hear every detail about the wedding and the mysterious man from the plane. "So he actually called you?" Sophia asked as they drove through familiar streets toward Emily's apartment. "He found my phone number on a receipt I left behind. Said he wanted to make sure I got it back." Sophia laughed. "That's the lamest excuse I've ever heard. He obviously just wanted to talk to you again." "Maybe, but he lives in Portland, and I live here. It's not like we can date." "People do long-distance relationships all the time," Sophia pointed out, "with phones and video calls and everything." Emily had thought about that too, but long-distance relationships required money for visits and phone plans with unlimited minutes. They required flexibility with work schedules and the ability to take time off for travel. "I'm being realistic," Emily said. "It was a nice moment, but that's all it was." Sophia pulled up outside Emily's building. "Sometimes being too realistic keeps you from taking chances that could change your life." Emily hugged her friend goodbye and climbed the stairs to her apartment. Everything looked exactly the same as she had left it, but somehow felt different, smaller and quieter than she remembered. She unpacked her suitcase and did a load of laundry. Tomorrow she would return to work and slip back into a regular routine. The wedding weekend would become a happy memory, and Marcus would fade into a pleasant what-if. But as Emily got ready for bed, she found herself hoping he would text her again, just to say goodnight, or ask how her flight went, or share something about his day. Her phone stayed silent. Emily tried to convince herself she was relieved. Complicated relationships with men who lived far away were the last thing she needed. Still, she fell asleep clutching her phone, just in case. Emily's first day back at work felt longer than usual. The coffee maker was still broken, and 2 of the regular morning customers complained about having to drink tea instead. By noon, Emily's feet already ached in her shoes. "You're distracted today," Sophia said during their break. They sat outside behind the diner, sharing a bag of chips from the vending machine. "Still thinking about airplane guy?" "His name is Marcus," Emily said, "and no, I'm not thinking about him." It was a lie. She had checked her phone 17 times since waking up, hoping for another text or call. Each time the screen stayed dark, she felt a little more foolish. "Have you texted him?" Sophia asked. "What would I say? Thanks for calling about my trash receipt?" "How about, hi, thanks for calling yesterday. Hope your flight home went well." Sophia made it sound so simple. "Normal people text each other, Emily. It's not a marriage proposal." But Emily was afraid of seeming desperate. She didn't want Marcus to think she was the type of woman who chased after men she barely knew, even if that's exactly what she wanted to do. The lunch rush kept Emily too busy to think about anything except taking orders and carrying plates. A group of construction workers came in and ordered enough food for 10 people. A family with 3 young children made a mess that took 20 minutes to clean up. By 3 o'clock, the diner had finally quieted down. Emily was wiping tables when her phone buzzed in her apron pocket. She almost dropped her cleaning rag pulling it out. "Hope you made it home safely yesterday. How was your first day back at work?" It was from Marcus. Emily read the message 3 times, her heart beating faster each time. He was thinking about her too. She typed and deleted 5 different responses before settling on something simple. "Flight was smooth. I'm getting braver. Work is busy but good. How was your flight?" The response came back within minutes. "Delayed 3 hours, but I survived. Glad to hear you're conquering your fear of flying." Emily smiled at her phone screen. Before she could second-guess herself, she typed back, "Maybe you're my good luck charm for flying." The response came even faster this time. "Happy to help anytime. What are you doing this evening?" Emily looked around the empty diner. She would finish her shift at 6, go home to her quiet apartment, heat up leftover Chinese food, and watch whatever was on television. Her life suddenly felt very small. "Nothing exciting. You?" "Same. Would you like to talk on the phone later? I'd like to hear more about the wedding." Emily's stomach fluttered with nervous excitement. A phone call felt more serious. Then texting, more personal and intimate. "I'd like that," she typed back. "What time?" "Is 8 good for you?" Emily calculated quickly. She would be home by 6:30, have time for a shower and something to eat. Perfect. The rest of her shift passed in a blur. Emily found herself smiling for no reason and humming along with the radio in the kitchen. Mr. Murphy commented that she seemed cheerful, and even the grumpy customer at table 4 left a decent tip. Sophia noticed the change immediately. "You're glowing," she said as they cleaned up at closing time. "Did Marcus text you?" "We're talking on the phone tonight," Emily admitted. "See? I told you to text him. Normal people communicate." Emily drove home faster than usual, eager to shower and change clothes, which was silly, since Marcus couldn't see her through the phone, but she wanted to feel pretty and confident for their conversation. She chose a comfortable dress and put on a little makeup, then felt ridiculous for getting dressed up to sit alone in her apartment. But when 8 o'clock came and her phone rang, Emily was glad she had made the effort. "Hi, Emily," Marcus said when she answered. His voice was even warmer over the phone than she remembered. "Hi. How was the rest of your day?" "Long meetings about boring business stuff? Much better now. Tell me about your sister's wedding. I want to hear everything." Emily settled onto her couch and described the ceremony, the reception, Jenny's beautiful dress, and the way Tom had cried when he saw his bride walking down the aisle. Marcus listened intently, asking questions and laughing at her funny stories. "It sounds perfect," he said. "Your sister is lucky to have you as her maid of honor. I'm lucky to have her as my sister. She's always been the brave one in our family." What do you mean? Emily told him about Jenny's adventures in college, her decision to move across the country for graduate school, her willingness to take risks for love and career opportunities. And what about you? Marcus asked. What risks have you taken? Emily was quiet for a moment. The truth was, she hadn't taken many risks at all. She had chosen safety and stability over adventure at every turn. Not many, she admitted. I'm more of a play-it-safe person. Nothing wrong with that. Safe can be good. But Emily heard something in his tone that suggested he didn't entirely believe it. What about you? Are you a risk-taker? Marcus was quiet for so long that Emily wondered if the call had dropped. I used to be, he said finally. Then I learned that some risks have bigger consequences than others. Emily wanted to ask what he meant, but something in his voice suggested it was a sensitive topic. Instead, she asked about his family and grew up. Marcus told her about his parents, who were both retired teachers in Chicago. His father had worked in public schools for 30 years, and his mother had taught kindergarten. They had instilled in him the value of education and hard work. They sound wonderful, Emily said. Do you see them often? A few times a year. They keep asking when I'm going to settle down and give them grandchildren. Emily felt heat rise in her cheeks. They were venturing into personal territory that made her both excited and nervous. What do you tell them? That I'm waiting for the right person, someone real and genuine, not someone who's interested in what I can provide for them. Emily sensed there was a story behind that comment, but she didn't push. Everyone had relationship baggage. She certainly did. They talked for over an hour about everything and nothing. Marcus asked about her work at the diner, and Emily found herself describing her regular customers and the satisfaction she got from providing good service. He made her job sound important and meaningful instead of just a way to pay bills. I should probably let you go, Marcus said eventually. It's getting late and you probably have to work tomorrow. Emily looked at the clock and was shocked to see it was past 9:30. The time had flown by. I do, but this was really nice. Thank you for calling. Thank you for answering. Emily, would it be okay if I called you again tomorrow night? Emily's heart jumped. I'd like that. After they hung up, Emily sat on her couch staring at her phone with a huge smile on her face. She felt like a teenager with her first crush. It was silly and wonderful at the same time. Sophia was right. Normal people communicated. And maybe, just maybe, Emily could be brave enough to see where this led. The next day dragged by even more slowly than the first. Emily caught herself watching the clock and counting hours until 8 o'clock. She served coffee and took orders and cleaned tables, but her mind was elsewhere. You've got it bad, Sophia observed during their afternoon break. I haven't seen you this happy about a guy since... ever. We've talked twice, Emily protested. I'm not planning our wedding. But you like him, Emily couldn't deny it. I do, but I'm trying not to get too excited. Long-distance relationships are hard. So move to Portland. Emily laughed. With what money? And leave my job for a man I've known for 3 days? People do crazier things for love. This isn't love, it's just interest, attraction, whatever you call it. But Emily's feelings were already deeper than she wanted to admit. Marcus made her feel interesting and valuable in a way no one ever had. When he talked to her, she felt like the most important person in the world. That evening's phone call was even better than the first. They talked about books and movies and travel dreams. Marcus had been to Europe and Asia for business, and he described places Emily had only seen in pictures. Where would you go if you could travel anywhere? He asked. Emily thought about it. Ireland, maybe. My grandmother came from there, and I've always wanted to see where she grew up. Ireland is beautiful. The countryside is like something from a fairy tale. You've been there? A few times for work. The people are incredibly friendly, and the food is better than everyone says. Emily tried to imagine having a job that took her to Ireland. It seemed as impossible as flying to the moon. What about you? She asked. If you could go anywhere just for fun, not work, where would it be? Marcus was quiet for a moment. Maybe somewhere simple. A beach town where nobody knows me and I could just be normal for a while. There was something wistful in his voice that made Emily curious. Normal how? I don't know. Walk around without people expecting things from me. Eat at regular restaurants and shop at regular stores and just blend in. Emily wondered what kind of business made it hard to be normal. But before she could ask, Marcus changed the subject to her plans for the weekend. They talked until almost 10 o'clock. When Marcus said goodnight, he asked if he could call her again the next day. Emily said yes without hesitation. This became their routine over the next week. Marcus called every evening at 8, and they talked for an hour or more. Emily learned that he liked jazz music and old movies and cooking elaborate meals for one person. Marcus learned that Emily read romance novels and watched cooking shows and dreamed of someday taking art classes. On Friday night, their conversation took a more serious turn. "Emily, can I ask you something personal?" Marcus said. Emily's pulse quickened. "Sure. Have you ever been married, or close to it?" Emily told him about Derek and how that relationship had ended. She tried to explain her ex-boyfriend's frustrations without making him sound like a villain. "He wasn't wrong," she said. "I do work a lot, and I don't have money for fancy dates or weekend trips. I understand why that got old." "That's not your fault," Marcus said firmly. "You work hard to take care of yourself. That's admirable, not a character flaw." Emily felt tears prick her eyes. No one had ever defended her work ethic before. Derek and other boyfriends had made her feel guilty for not being more carefree and spontaneous. "What about you?" she asked. "Ever been close to marriage?" Marcus sighed deeply. "Once, a woman named Vanessa. We dated for 2 years, and I thought we were building something real. Turns out she was more interested in my bank account than my personality. I'm sorry, that must have hurt." "It did. Made me realize I need to be more careful about who I trust with personal information." Emily wondered what he meant by personal information, but she didn't want to pry. Everyone deserved privacy while getting to know someone new. "For what it's worth," she said, "I have no idea what your bank account looks like, and I still enjoy talking to you every night." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "That means more to me than you know." Their conversation that night lasted almost 2 hours. When they finally said goodnight, Emily felt closer to Marcus than she had to anyone in years. She was falling for a man she had spent less than 3 hours with in person, and it terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. On Saturday morning, Emily was getting ready for work when her phone rang. It was earlier than Marcus usually called, and Emily felt a flutter of worry. Had something happened? "Good morning," Marcus said when she answered. "I hope I'm not calling too early." "It's fine. I was just getting ready for work. Is everything okay?" "Everything's great. I have a question for you, and I want you to think about it before you answer." Emily sat down on her bed, heart pounding. "Okay. I have a business trip next weekend. It's to a city about 2 hours from where you live. I was wondering if you'd like to meet me there for dinner. I could drive down after my meetings, and we could spend Saturday evening together." Emily's mind raced. He wanted to see her in person. He was willing to drive 2 hours out of his way to have dinner with her. "Marcus, she started, then stopped. She wanted to say yes more than anything, but doubt crept in. "Can I think about it?" "Of course. Take all the time you need. I just thought it might be nice to continue our conversations face to face." After they hung up, Emily sat on her bed staring at her phone. This was the risk Sophia had talked about, the chance to see where this connection might lead. But it was also scary. What if they didn't have the same chemistry in person? What if Marcus was disappointed when he saw her again? What if she was building up their phone conversations into something bigger than they really were? Emily got dressed and drove to work, her mind spinning with possibilities and worries. She had 1 week to decide whether she was brave enough to find out what Marcus Reed was really like when they had more than 3 hours together. For the first time in her adult life, Emily Carter was considering taking a real risk for love. The question was whether she had the courage to follow through. Emily spent the entire week thinking about Marcus's invitation. Every time she served coffee or cleaned tables, her mind wandered to the possibility of seeing him again. The excitement mixed with terror made her stomach flutter constantly. "You have to go," Sophia said for the 10th time, as they counted tips after the Friday evening shift. "When was the last time a guy drove 2 hours just to have dinner with you?" "Never," Emily admitted. "That's part of what scares me." "What's the worst that could happen?" Emily had made a mental list. "We don't connect in person the way we do on the phone. He realizes I'm boring. I realize he's not who I think he is. I get my hopes up and end up heartbroken. Or, Sophia said, you have an amazing time and this turns into something real. Emily wanted to believe that was possible, but her experience with relationships had taught her to expect disappointment. That night, Marcus called at his usual time. Emily had decided to give him her answer, but as soon as she heard his voice, her nerve almost failed. "How was your day?" he asked, and Emily could hear the smile in his voice. "Busy. Good tips, though." Emily took a deep breath. "Marcus, about tomorrow night. You don't have to do anything that makes you uncomfortable," he said quickly. "If it feels too soon, we can wait." His understanding made Emily's decision easier. "I want to see you, but I'm nervous." "I'm nervous too," Marcus admitted. "Good nervous, though." They made plans to meet at a restaurant downtown at 7 o'clock. Marcus would drive down after his business meetings finished, and Emily would take the afternoon off work. "Just dinner," Marcus said. "No pressure, no expectations, just two people who enjoy talking to each other." After they hung up, Emily felt excited and terrified in equal measure. She had 18 hours to get ready for what felt like the most important date of her life. Saturday morning dragged by. Emily tried to clean her apartment to keep busy, but she kept checking the clock. Finally, she decided to go shopping for something new to wear. The mall was crowded with weekend shoppers. Emily wandered through department stores, feeling overwhelmed by the choices. Everything was either too expensive or too formal or not quite right. In the third store, she found a simple blue dress that made her feel confident and pretty. It was on sale for $30, more than she usually spent on clothes, but worth it for this occasion. Emily got her hair trimmed and bought new lipstick. She painted her nails and took a long bath with expensive soap she had been saving for a special occasion. By 5 o'clock, she was as ready as she would ever be. The drive to the restaurant took 40 minutes. Emily's hands shook on the steering wheel as she navigated unfamiliar streets. What if Marcus had changed his mind? What if he took one look at her and regretted driving 2 hours for dinner? She found the restaurant easily, a cozy Italian place with soft lighting and small tables. Emily arrived 10 minutes early and sat in her car trying to calm her nerves. At exactly 7 o'clock, she saw Marcus's familiar figure walking across the parking lot. He wore dark jeans and a button-down shirt that made him look professional but approachable. When he spotted Emily getting out of her car, his face lit up with a smile that made her heart skip. "Emily," he said, walking over to her, "you look beautiful." Emily felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself." There was a moment of awkwardness as they figured out whether to hug or shake hands. Marcus solved it by offering his arm like an old-fashioned gentleman. Emily took it, feeling the solid warmth of his muscles under the cotton shirt. The restaurant was perfect. Intimate, without being romantic enough to feel like pressure. The hostess seated them at a corner table with flickering candles and soft jazz playing in the background. "This is nice," Emily said, looking around at the exposed brick walls and vintage photographs. "I hoped you'd like it. I asked the hotel concierge for somewhere quiet where we could actually hear each other talk." They ordered wine and looked at menus, but Emily was too nervous to focus on food. Sitting across from Marcus in person felt different from their phone conversations, more real and immediate. "How did your meetings go?" she asked, trying to make normal conversation. "Fine. Boring contract negotiations." Marcus set down his menu and looked directly at her. "Emily, I have to tell you something." Emily's stomach dropped. Here it came, the revelation that would change everything. "I haven't been completely honest with you about my work," Marcus continued. "I wanted you to get to know me as a person first before you knew about, other things." Emily nodded, not trusting her voice to stay steady. "I own a company, a fairly successful one. That's why I travel so much, and why I was being vague about business meetings." Emily felt relief wash over her. "That's it? You're a business owner?" Marcus looked surprised by her reaction. "Most women care a lot about that kind of thing. Money changes how people see me." "I figured you had money," Emily said honestly. "Your clothes, the way you travel, the fact that you can afford to drive 2 hours for dinner. I'm not stupid." "I never thought you were stupid. I've had experiences with women who were more interested in my bank account than my personality." Emily reached across the table and touched his hand. "Marcus, I've been worried all week that you'd take one look at me and realize I'm just a small-town waitress with nothing interesting to offer. We both have insecurities." The tension in Marcus's shoulders seemed to ease. He turned his hand palm up and laced his fingers through hers. "You're not just anything," he said softly. "You're kind and genuine, and you make me laugh. That's worth more than any bank account." The waiter came to take their order, breaking the intimate moment. But Emily felt like they had crossed an important bridge. Marcus had been honest about his wealth, and she hadn't run away screaming or started calculating what he could buy her. Over dinner, they talked about everything and nothing, the same way they had on the phone. But being able to see Marcus's expressions and gestures made the conversation richer. He had expressive hands and kind eyes that crinkled when he laughed. "Tell me about your company," Emily said over dessert. "What kind of business is it?" Marcus described his software development firm that created applications for small businesses. He had started it 5 years ago with a partner and built it into something that employed 30 people. "It sounds like meaningful work," Emily said. "Helping small business owners must be rewarding." "It is, though it means a lot of travel and long hours. Sometimes I wonder if the success is worth the isolation." Emily understood isolation, though for different reasons. "Do you ever think about doing something else?" "Sometimes. What about you? Have you always wanted to be a waitress?" Emily laughed. "Not exactly. When I was little, I wanted to be an artist. I used to draw constantly, portraits, landscapes, anything I could see." "What happened?" "Life, I guess. Art supplies are expensive, and art school seemed impossible. I needed to work right after high school to help my mom with bills." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Do you still draw?" Emily shook her head. "Not in years. I tell myself I don't have time, but honestly, I think I'm afraid I'm not as good as I thought I was." "Fear can be paralyzing," Marcus said softly. "I understand that." They lingered over coffee and dessert until the restaurant started to empty out. Emily didn't want the evening to end. Sitting across from Marcus felt natural and comfortable, like they had been doing this for years. "Walk with me?" Marcus asked when they finally paid the check. "There's a park across the street." The evening air was cool and pleasant. They walked slowly along a path lit by old-fashioned street lamps, talking about books and movies and travel dreams. Marcus told Emily about trips to Europe and Asia, and she described her fantasy of visiting Ireland someday. "Maybe you will," Marcus said. "Dreams have a way of coming true when you least expect it." Emily wanted to believe that. Walking beside Marcus under the stars felt like a dream already. They reached a small gazebo in the center of the park and sat on a bench overlooking a pond. Ducks glided across the water, and Emily could hear music from a restaurant nearby. "This has been perfect," she said softly. "It has." Marcus turned to face her. "Emily, I want to ask you something, and I want you to know there's no pressure to answer yes." Emily's heart started beating faster. "Okay. I'd like to see you again. I know the distance makes it complicated, but I think what we have is worth exploring." Emily had been thinking the same thing all evening. "I'd like that too, but I can't afford to travel much, and I can't take a lot of time off work." "I travel for business anyway. I could route trips through your city, or we could meet halfway sometimes. We'll figure it out if we both want to." Emily looked at Marcus's earnest face in the soft lamplight. He was offering to rearrange his schedule and travel plans to spend time with her. No one had ever made that kind of effort. "Yes," she said simply. "I want to try." Marcus smiled and leaned closer. "May I kiss you?" Emily's answer was to close the distance between them. Marcus's lips were warm and gentle, and the kiss tasted like wine and possibilities. When they broke apart, Emily felt dizzy with happiness. "I should probably drive you back to your car," Marcus said reluctantly. "It's getting late." They walked back to the restaurant parking lot hand in hand. Emily's old Honda looked shabby next to Marcus's sleek sedan, but he didn't seem to notice or care. "I'll call you tomorrow," Marcus promised, holding both her hands. "Drive safely." Emily drove home in a daze of happiness. The evening had been everything she had hoped for and more. Marcus was exactly the man she had fallen for during their phone conversations, kind, interesting, and genuinely interested in her. For the first time in years, Emily felt hopeful about the future. Maybe Sophia was right about taking chances. Maybe some risks were worth it. Her phone rang just as she was getting ready for bed. "Did you make it home safely?" Marcus asked. "Just walked in. Thank you for tonight. It was wonderful." "Thank you for saying yes, for giving this a chance." They talked for another hour, reliving moments from the evening and making tentative plans for Marcus's next visit. When they finally said goodnight, Emily fell asleep with a smile on her face. Over the next few months, Marcus kept his promise. He rerouted business trips through Emily's city whenever possible, and they met halfway for weekend getaways twice. Their relationship deepened gradually and naturally. Emily learned that Marcus was generous but not flashy with his money. He picked restaurants based on good food, not high prices. He drove a nice car but didn't talk about expensive toys or luxury purchases. Most importantly, he never made Emily feel bad about her modest lifestyle. Marcus learned that Emily was fiercely independent and proud of her work ethic. She refused to let him pay for expensive dinners or hotel rooms, insisting on splitting costs even when it meant choosing cheaper options. Her integrity and self-respect only made him admire her more. The distance remained challenging. Emily missed Marcus between visits, and phone calls weren't quite the same as being together. But they both agreed the relationship was worth the effort. 3 months after their first dinner date, Marcus surprised Emily with a weekend trip to a small coastal town. They walked on the beach, ate fresh seafood, and talked about everything and nothing. "I have something for you," Marcus said on their last evening, pulling a small wrapped package from his suitcase. Emily opened it to find a set of professional drawing pencils and a high-quality sketchbook. "You said you used to draw," Marcus explained. "I thought maybe you'd like to try again." Emily felt tears prick her eyes. No one had ever paid attention to her abandoned dreams before. "Marcus, this is too much. It's not about the money. It's about seeing you happy." That night, Emily made the first drawing she had done in years, a sketch of Marcus reading by the hotel window. Her hands remembered the familiar motions, and the pencil felt natural in her grip. "You're incredibly talented," Marcus said, looking at the finished sketch. "You should never have stopped." Emily looked at the drawing and felt a spark of pride she hadn't experienced in years. Maybe it wasn't too late to reclaim parts of herself she had set aside. 6 months into their relationship, Emily's mother, Helen, asked to meet Marcus. Emily was nervous about the introduction, knowing her mother's protective instincts and practical concerns about dating someone wealthy. Marcus came for Sunday dinner at Helen's modest house, bringing flowers and a bottle of wine. He complimented Helen's cooking and asked thoughtful questions about her work as a school secretary. By the end of the evening, even cautious Helen was charmed. "He's a good man," Helen told Emily after Marcus left. "He looks at you like you're the most important person in the world." "He makes me feel that way," Emily admitted. "That's what love should do. It should make you feel like the best version of yourself." Emily realized that's exactly what Marcus did for her. He encouraged her drawing, supported her work ethic, and made her feel beautiful and interesting. In return, she grounded him and reminded him that genuine connection mattered more than business success. 1 year after their first flight together, Marcus surprised Emily with plane tickets to Portland. "I thought we could recreate our first meeting," he said, "except this time, you won't be nervous about flying." Emily was still nervous, but for different reasons. Flying with Marcus felt like closing a circle, acknowledging how far they had come since that chance encounter. They sat in the same row where they had first met, though this time they were traveling together by choice rather than random seat assignment. Emily rested her head on Marcus's shoulder, awake this time, and by invitation. "No regrets?" Marcus asked softly as the plane took off. Emily thought about all the risks she had taken over the past year. Answering Marcus's first phone call, meeting him for dinner, opening her heart to love despite the fear of disappointment. "None," she said, meaning it completely. As the plane climbed into the sky, Emily felt grateful for the exhaustion and random seating assignment that had brought them together. Sometimes the best things in life came from the most unexpected places. Marcus squeezed her hand gently, and Emily squeezed back. Below them, the world spread out in all its complicated beauty. But up here, together, everything felt simple and right. They had found each other across the space between seats 12B and 12C. Now they were building something real that could bridge any distance. Emily closed her eyes and listened to the steady thrum of the airplane engines, no longer afraid of flying. With Marcus beside her, she felt ready for any adventure that awaited them. The plane soared higher, carrying them toward their future together, whatever that might hold.